and you shouted or something, yelled, screamed some obscenity at the director, and he came and said, "Excuse me," and you were just living, and I just, it's all right, it's all right. I just walk him out to the parking lot. You're connected to the earth.
No, I went volcano a couple of times, and then you would always walk me out and go, "You all right, man? Okay, yeah, all right, let's go." I feel stupid now.
Well, I got to say though, I mean,
Thank God you were there.
part of the reason I asked Gary to do the role was because he was a paramedic who had been psychologically trained, you know.
Clear.
Gary and I were the only two that didn't have to sit through this horrific makeup thing.
Well, Gary would come into the makeup trailer, and it was like shit. You know, he'd smile into the mirror, and then he'd be out the door.
But Eric, I never saw you without your makeup for the whole time we were.
I saw him with welts at the end of the day when they would take off the makeup, and his skin would come off. It was just awful.
Eric had no life because he was working literally 4 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night every single day. He was in every single scene.
But we had more of a life.
We had more of a life, and we were both single. So we were going off to have all this fun on the weekends.
What happened during those.
Yeah, and one day we were in the makeup trailer by ourselves, and we were talking about these weekends we'd had, and we were having lots of fun. And I walk out, and he's like standing by the door. She and I started making stuff up.
Wild.
And he'd look at us when we got on the set. He'd look at me on the set and said, "Have a good weekend."
I bet you weren't making up that much.
Didn't you marry one of your stories?
I did.
Well, there you go.
So it wasn't that
So it
far-fetched.
was not all made up.
No, not well.
And it's
not
worked out too.
Yeah, and we're still together all these years
Produced
later.
offspring.
But you met him on the show.
He came in because
I invited him to a ski trip.
Right.
And
Oh, sure, you invited him to a ski trip.
Now, Lauren, you were dealing with all of these yo-yos all on a daily basis. Was it weird to be the youngest person on the set, or what was it like?
Well, not for me because I was an only child, and with a single parent, with a single mother. So I was a child actor, so I was constantly around adults, and that was totally normal for me. And I just a lot of times wished I was older so I could be, part of the.
Go on one of those ski trips.
Yeah, exactly. But I do remember laughing a lot. We had a lot of good times, and you especially cracked me up a lot.
Jeffrey.
One thing that I always felt about the makeup is that it actually gets you to another place. Emotionally as an actor, so it's very cool. So, plus you hear your voice more when it's a little bit covered.
The way it wrapped around your neck and your chin, because you use your forehead so much, but then it attached right here, and I just found the way it held my neck in place.
There's a stillness to it.
A whole other.
Yeah, there's kind of an economy. I would say an economy, and I remember when Scott Patterson,
Dark Horizon,
right, and he was said, "How should I handle the makeup?" I said, "Well, try and let it do some of the work for you, because that's the brilliance of that makeup."
They worked so hard to, I think, make us individuals that it helped a lot when you looked at yourself in the mirror and you went, "Oh, okay, that's who I am."
well, I'd show up at 4:35 in the morning, and I'm a night owl, so it wasn't me. So I'd plop myself down, fall asleep, and about an hour and a half later, I would wake up as Susan, which was wonderful. I was born. I felt really beautiful as Susan. There was a whole elegance. There's a lot of attachment as a female with your hair, and I had long blonde hair at the time. And kind of letting go of that and allowing Susan to come out was a wonderful process.
Yeah, I think that the gift was a certain amount of dignity and to the principal characters.
One of the things I remember about the makeup the most was that we would have time off between the series, the TV movies. There'd be sometimes 6 to 10 months between. And because the characters were so specific, I wasn't sure that I was going to remember how to do Albert. But it was always interesting. As soon as that head got on.
Like riding a bike.
Yep. But not before. So the night before, I'd be trying to prepare. How did he talk? How did he move? I couldn't remember a thing.
Until you saw him.
Until I saw him. And then there he was. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it physically changes you so much, and it's not possible to feel the same way you felt before you had the prosthetic on your head. So it makes you very aware that you are different, and makes you physically act differently. And you're also, whether you're conscious of it or not, knowing that that people are treating you differently and looking at you differently and making an issue out of the way that you look.
Which means
Because
that
you're
Gary and I
different.
basically had a much harder job than these people.
We actually had to act.
harder.
We were acting. They just put on the
Oh, I'll just put on a
makeup.
headband. I had my character.
You know,
I had to really
Next.
dig deep.
He took us
Good catch.
out in the head. And he would
Train
put the heads
station.
on and then go walk around and see how people reacted to us. And it was really, really weird because we were walking down the street, just like we were normal. And then you'd see these, one of those huge double
Or
takes.
not.
from-
My favorite was when I took Michelle to the immigration office downtown to get an immigration form to file if you were, an immigrant. And the lady behind the thing was just, yes, honey, here's the paper, fill it out, sign it there, and bring it back to me. Thank you very much. Next.
Wasn't she blind?
No! I remember Gary and Eric went down with Eric and makeup down to Union Station.
Right.
And Olivera Street and around there because I wanted them to get the feeling of what it was like to
It was
be.
horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
not
weird.
so bad.
Yeah, because you were the human. Same thing as walking through an airport with Gary, no one recognizing me.
Well, what was it like when you went down to Olivera Street? Was
Well,
it-
then there were people who would actually look at you in some kind of apprehension or fear, as if there was, I don't want to look at this. I can't deal with this. This is a little, which gives you this whole thing of I don't fit in. They're looking at me. I'm not part of this culture. I'm not this. Which
I'm
is
different.
exactly your point.
I'm different.
And that
That's the
does
thing.
give you this sort of whoa. And then you know that there are those people who readily accept on the basis of who you are versus those who cannot accept because they can't get past a certain something.
Right. Well, that's what the show was about from the very beginning. I mean, remember when we had our first reading, we all talked about instances of prejudice we might have had in our life. How did you feel when I called you and said, hey, we're going to do some more?
That was a
really
nice
the
phone
gift.
call to get.
It was the gift that kept on giving. I mean, really.
When I first heard that we were canceled, there was a little voice in my head that says, I should clean my guns. No. That's a whole different voice. No, it said, this is not over. This is not done. This will be back. And I was saddened and I was grief-stricken, but I expected it to come back in some form.
It was amazing. I remember we were doing the makeup test, Rick, for the Dark Horizon to make sure everybody still, had their chops up and doing new heads for Lauren and everything. And I ran into Vanita, our first assistant director, standing outside the makeup trailer where she had just come out from seeing you, and she was sobbing, leaning against the trailer, sobbing. And
Was she pregnant at the time?
No, I said, Vanita, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she said, I just saw Eric, and I can't believe how much I missed George.
George is a big hit with the women, I'll tell you.
Is he?
Yeah, he's a very compassionate guy who listens.
You also had a wonderful group of writers working for you.
Yes, we did.
Steve Mitchell and his partner Craig Van Sickle were our story editors, remember? And Tom Chihak was writer-producer.
Yes.
Diane Froloff and her husband
yeah.
Andy Schneider headed the team and were involved in the Alien Nation movies, along with my best pals, Harry and Renee Longstreet.
We get a lot of credit for having made that show. And
Well, the imagination.
it wasn't us. It was
Yeah.
you guys. It was you and
Yeah.
the writers, really,
And
that gave
makeup
us the
and-
words.
Sort of like you
stories to
you
play.
organize the playing field and we get to play.
I've had couples come up to me and say, we quote a lot of you and George
Yeah.
when we're having a fight.
And at the same time, I never wanted to lose sight of the core of the piece, which was this exploration of prejudice and intolerance and one culture banging into another. And
But it's those stories that propelled the
Right.
show.
That's what the show's
that
about.
made the critics stand up and take notice. It is so timely today. You are so 100% right. You cannot turn on talk radio without it being, what are we going to do about the immigrants?
Alien Nation gave us an opportunity to look at humanity through a different lens, through the eyes of the newcomers. And I think when you have that different perspective, suddenly you get a whole different view of life.
Oh,
A large part of our appreciative audience out there, Eric doesn't know it so much because he wasn't that recognized, but I get it all the time. African Americans, black folks, just
Yes.
related
Yeah.
so strongly.
Everybody thought it was about them. It wasn't about the black experience necessarily, or the Latino experience, or we were the last people off the boat.
I was doing a play in New York. I got on the subway, and I was really the only white person in the subway car. Everyone else was ethnic. And they were all staring at me. And I thought, this is weird. And then finally, a black woman looked at me and she said, you're that guy, aren't you? You're that George. And so then they all wanted to talk. So I went about 15
Stops
past my stop, and we talked for probably a half hour, just going uptown.
Wow.
And then I got in, you know.
Wow, that's
What a
great.
great story. Oh, that's just the best.
I went to some big industry party out at Universal, and there was a very large contingent of little people. And they all glommed on to me like, and it was like I was being led to the ship, you know, by the I'll go, I'll be Richard Drow, I'll go. And they just loved the show.
It's funny, one of the great things about this whole cast is that, I mean, I wonder how many groups of people can get together, what is it, 18 years since we started, 10 years since we did the last movie together, and still want to be together and have this much fun, and this is what it was like.
And even want to do it again, too.
Yeah.
We laughed all day long.
All day long.
Every day. It was fun. And we all made it fun. And it was all like a big family, you know. And
It all starts with this guy.
Of course.
Because if you have a guy at the top who's a
The picture
paranoid
director.
schizophrenic, that goes down right to craft services.
Yes.
And you have a set like that.
One of your prime jobs as a director is to make everybody comfortable.
like your own personal warm fuzzy family all the time. But that makes you so willing to go the extra mile to do anything.
The critics around the country, almost always to a person, had nothing but wonderful things to say about each of you and what you did and what you brought to the show. It's because of the interplay between the characters that you all, you know, brought to life so beautifully, and that's what people always really, really cared about. And I think when we were doing the show too, we could see it going on because there were just constantly new ideas coming up.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like life. It could just keep going on and on.
Yeah.
Just like this alienation family of ours,
Yes.
which will go on and on and on.
Zala, Sally.